Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Today's guest is a very special one. He's actually the original guest. He's the OG. I guess that is OG, right? Original guest. And I was reminiscing about when it was. Fall of 2017 or 18. I can't even remember. It's an indication of too much going on in my life. I bet you can't remember either, can you, Chris?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. So he's got too much going on too. Good problems to have, folks. It's Chris Yates from Centurica. Centurica is a due diligence firm that helps buyers not make epic mistakes and also helps buyers find the right business. And we're going to talk about both of their services there. But more importantly, Chris is just going to educate you on what you can do on your own if you're buying a business and are going to go that due diligence route on your own, or if you're buying a business if you're on the hunt for buying a business and what MarketWatch can do. Chris, welcome again to the Quiet Light Podcast.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
I think your services are probably one of the top 2 or 3 services that I refer people out to. It's usually, an e-commerce bookkeeper, a contract attorney, and Centurica. For buyers doing due diligence. And we've always been an advocate of strong due diligence on the back end, even though we're on the sell side. So I think what you're doing over there is fantastic. But I'm sure I didn't get the intro exactly right. Can you give an overview of what you guys do over there at Centurica and MarketWatch more specifically?
Yeah, sure. So Centurica is a due diligence firm, as you mentioned. And what that means, the way that I've kind of been describing it a little bit lately is, if you think of a Venn diagram, with one circle being, the accountant, right, who goes in and checks all the numbers and makes sure that they're good to go. And then on the other side of the Venn diagram, you have this like a marketing agency who you might hire to look at how well is this business performing? What are risks to the traffic or the sales channels and things like that? We sort of fill both of those Venn diagrams, and we're really good at the middle of those two. We also layer on sort of what I think of as a third circle, which is the owner's mindset. So both myself and my business partner, Brian, have many, many years of experience with e-commerce businesses, with acquisitions ourselves through our own portfolios and investments that we do. So we're always looking at every deal like, hey, what would I want to know? What risks would I want to know about this deal if it was me buying it? And so that's kind of the mindset we go in with all of these. But in short, we verify the income, the expenses, and we look for any issues with that, poor performing KPIs, poor performing trends. And then we look at the traffic and the sales and channels to see if there's any performance issues, policy violations, anything like that. Basically, we're real heavy at making sure that you go in with your eyes open on the deal that you're considering acquiring.
Let's talk about one of my epic failures for a moment. I sold my business through Quiet Light back in the fall of 2010. It was a brilliant site, lots of really great white hat organic traffic. And then I turned around and bought one in the spring of 2012. And I think it had maybe 6 keywords on page 1 and then nothing else. And I had it for 42 days, and then the Penguin update hit and it got crushed and everything fell off page 1. I lost about $280,000 in the period of 6 months. If we were having a beer sitting across the table and I was not hiring you for your services, what would you tell me to do other than smack me upside the head? What would you tell me to do and to look at? In this particular case, Chris, it was a content site. Are there any things that anybody that's buying a content site must look at to make, an educated decision?
Yeah. So content sites are a really interesting one to start with. So I'm kind of glad you started there. And for a few reasons. And the way I think about risk with a content site specifically is you have to look at the macro risk. So what's happening with the type of industry that this site is talking about first off. So is this a trendy industry? Is it something that is growing and increasing in terms of awareness or whatever? Or is this a fad that's kind of coming and going, things like that. So you have to start sort of with the macro environment. Are people looking for this online? How is that changing over time? Is this something that will be here today and won't be here in 5 years or something like that? And then we look at the business model risk. So content sites in general, if you look at them and generally for buyers, I would say make sure that you're really comfortable with whatever the business model risk is before you start even thinking about what are the risks of this specific business. And so by business model risk, I mean, with a content site, the nature of these things is that you typically can't pay for traffic to content sites because you make your money through advertising, and there are ways to do arbitrage with paid traffic and things like that, but that's very, very advanced and not always very sustainable. But most of these sites, they're generally driven by some sort of free traffic. And we all know the biggest sources of free traffic are going to be Google SEO, maybe some social media like Pinterest or Facebook or something like that. So due to the nature of this business model, you have to go get free traffic. And the other nature of this business model is that typically what you're doing with that traffic when it comes to your website is you're sending them right off of your website to go somewhere else. And that's either through display advertising or through affiliates, right? So the whole business model is built around getting free traffic and then sending them off your website. So what happens when the free traffic goes away? Now you have really nothing left, essentially, right? Because as soon as the new visitors stop coming, you're no longer making revenue. It's all driven by that new visitor. So your job is to really understand that that's just the nature of content sites. And you have to be able to sleep well at night knowing that that is a reality. And so for a buyer like yourself, let's say that you had 250 grand to put into a content site, right? And you are going to go buy a single content site that was fully driven by Google SEO. My recommendation generally would be not to do that because I would say you should have at least maybe 5 sites, because if there is an algorithm update like you experienced, if you do it right, some of your sites will go down, some will actually benefit from those updates, and some will stay the same. So you get a little bit of that portfolio effect. Now we can get into the specifics after the business model piece, but I want to see you, Joe, if you have any follow-ups on that.
Yeah, well, how do you get to 5 without buying one first, right? You can't get a portfolio of 5 without making that first purchase. How do you get there?
So what I think the point I'm trying to make here is that you have to understand that one site is not it's like having a one-legged stool, right? Okay. And so you have to start somewhere. Agreed. You can start by if you had 250 grand, you could split that up across 4 or 5 deals and do it over, say 6 to 12 months. So you're going to have that period of time when you are on a one-legged stool as a result of that. Now, could you go find a portfolio of sites that maybe have a few in it that are a little bit diversified? That does exist. It does come up on the market every once in a while. But the more specific you get about your criteria, the longer it's going to take for you to find a deal. So it is a bit of a trade-off from that perspective. But yeah, you got to start somewhere. And that's where we get into the very specific due diligence that you can do on that first deal that you do, and layering on somebody who really knows SEO, who knows these types of sites well, as either an advisor or a partner in the deal with you, so that you go in with, again, with your eyes open.
Yeah, what we're talking about really is channel risk when it comes to having 5 content sites versus 1. So when we talk about channel risk on the podcast, audience listeners, we're not just talking about Amazon or eBay or your Shopify store. We're talking about maybe one SaaS customer that's generating, 500 subscribers a month, corporation with all their employees, or in this case, one content site. So diversifying channel risk would be going from 1 to 5, from 1 to 10, so on and so forth. It's, the lower the risk, the higher the value of the business is generally how it works. You mentioned algo updates or algorithm updates. I guess I did because I mentioned the Penguin update. It feels like Google is smart enough now and has been around long enough that it's much, much harder to cheat. Are there still substantial algorithm updates like the Penguin and Panda updates back in the day that were really crushing people that cheated? Or is it just simply harder to rank, or neither?
Yeah, there was a recent one actually. So the short answer is yes, they still get rolled out regularly. And again, I think it's just the nature of the beast. I think over a long enough time frame, those who are just focusing as Google would want them to do on really good content and good user experience and things like that will ultimately win out over time. But that there is a huge incentive for people who can game the system to be able to make that short-term money, flip those sites to somebody who's unsuspecting, and they buy them, and then they sort of suffer the results of the future updates and things like that. So that is kind of, I think, just the nature of the beast of these types of sites, is that there's a whole really savvy group of people who know how to, kind of manipulate things. But I mean, just as an example, there was a relatively recent Google algorithm update that crushed a bunch of review sites that kind of did like the best of X, the best mops for 2021 or something like that, right? Those types of sites where it was just kind of an aggregation of a bunch of lists of the best products, those sites got crushed basically. And you'll see those types of sites popping up especially on some of the marketplaces and sell side representatives who focus more on content sites. You'll see a lot of those types of sites popping up. And those are some of the ones that really, really got crushed recently. So it still happens. And I think there's one, I'm not sure where it's at right now, but the latest one is relating to site speed and user experience. We're expecting, something pretty substantial coming out there. So yeah, this stuff's it's a constantly evolving space, and you have to, like, in my opinion is you have to understand this is the business model, and like, you have to learn to love that. You have to learn to, kind of take your own spin on this and either like realize that, hey, I'm always going to be gaming the system, or, hey, eventually I'm going to win out over time, or somewhere in the middle, right? Like, everybody kind of finds the way that they're willing to sleep at night with these type of content sites that are risky.
Yeah. And it's the niche, there's no utopian niche, right? It's not. Content sites are so easy to operate and run, or FBA businesses, or straight up e-commerce businesses, or SaaS businesses. They all have their own challenges, and you have to become an expert in that particular niche. You just have to, pick your poison and then really become that expert to make sure that you're offsetting, the risk of your investment, and making sure that you're protecting it and growing it as much as possible. So it's not like I'll only buy content sites because they're so much easier and the overhead is so much lower. The competition is just as hard, and it's algorithm updates when you're selling physical products, especially when it comes to Amazon FBA businesses, which these days, Chris, is all the rage. Are you getting swamped with, due diligence requests for, some of these aggregators and larger companies buying FBA businesses?
Yeah, we are. We work with probably, I'd say, either currently work or have helped establish at least half of the aggregators who've raised, let's say, 9 figures plus in funding, or substantial amounts of money. So yeah, this is very much in demand over the last year.
Are you doing the due diligence for them, or training up their people to do it themselves? Because I would think that they'd be wanting to do it themselves over the long run.
Somewhat both, but more of our focus is actually on just doing the work, augmenting their team. There's value to having a third party who doesn't have skin in the game or isn't getting incentivized for a deal to complete, and to help their investors or lenders, sort of feel like, hey, there is a neutral third party who's looking at this and letting us know what the risks are. I
can see the logic in that for sure. So with content sites, the risk is, just buying one. And of course, you got to get to that point and own one. With FBA businesses, what do you see from, your view of the world of, of the risks associated with that? And the obvious ones that we always talk about, by the way, are single SKU businesses and businesses that are young and things of that nature. But what are you seeing that comes up that somebody that's not going to use your services should focus on?
Yeah. So first off, I start with this, which is, if the product sucks, you're going to be swimming upstream for the rest of your experience with this product. So don't buy something where the product sucks. And by sucks, I mean, like, it is a shady area. Like, for instance, a certain supplement that makes health claims that are a little, questionable, or a product that is really commonly broken by Amazon as they process the warehouse stuff or through shipping, things that have weird technology things that like won't work for people, or have really, like just anything where it's like users could have a bad experience with a product. You're starting from swimming upstream right off the bat there. So that's one thing I would say to start with, is just that product. And where you can get some indications of that is actually by, if you can get access to their Amazon account, you can download all their, kind of review history. You can look at their reviews online. You can use some tools like Review Meta and some of those that will give you a sense of, like, was there any kind of review manipulation and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, if you start seeing in the messaging with the buyer and the seller, you start seeing in case logs where Amazon's complaining about user experience. You're seeing performance notifications in the Amazon account where listings have been taken down for periods of time because of a user complaining and they got burnt, or their skin got red because they put this thing on them, or whatever it was, or their house started leaking when they installed this thing onto their toilet, or whatever it is. That kind of stuff is just going to indicate that this is going to be just a swimming upstream kind of scenario, and you're going to be dealing with listings getting taken down and thus revenue going along with it.
So asking a seller to provide view-only access to the seller account for reports pre-letter of intent might be a challenge these days because there's such a frenzy. Is there a third-party service, an outside service that enables you to look at some of these ratings and reviews and complaints and whatnot where the seller does not have to provide that access?
You can just look at the Amazon listing. That's actually,
that's obvious, but it's almost, I want to be kind here in my words. That's work, Chris. You actually have to go through them one by one and look at what people are saying. That's me being a wise ass, folks. Sorry about that. I guess that's the most obvious one, but there's no third-party app that will give you a complete rundown, not just of the reviews. I'm talking about any suspensions and warnings and things of that nature. Or is that just simply all inside the seller account?
Yeah, there are tools you can look at that give you some history on the Amazon account. Things like Review Meta I mentioned can kind of, and there's others like that out there where it'll tell you if there was likely, kind of a scammy reviewer who reviewed the product or some of those kinds of things. And it'll give you some history. That's getting harder though. Now Amazon's changing the way that they're doing their reviews and stuff like that. So I don't know how long that's going to be possible, but at least let's say as of recording today and in the past, you should be able to get a pretty good sense of, how likely is it that they have, sort of manipulated reviews in there. And just to give you the audience an idea how that works, like these companies will actually aggregate the reviews over time, and they'll look at the reviewer. Did they only review one product one time, and were they a new Amazon account, right? That would be an indication that maybe that was, sort of a manipulative type review or something along those lines. So that would be one. You can look at, just other Amazon tools that are out there that have historic sales data and pricing data for the products to see, did they start out the launch at, $5 and then raise it up to $20 on the product or something like that. So that'll give you an indication that maybe they were doing, some price testing, or maybe they were lowering the price at launch in order to do things like that. But the reality is when you get into so you mentioned LOI. So pre-LOI, to me, the way that I usually say this to people is ask the questions that you need to know, and only the questions that you need to know in order to value this business and understand if it's the right fit. So if I were to ask the seller pre-LOI, have you had any account suspensions? Have you had any policy violations? And they said no. And then when I got in the account after LOI and to verify that that was actually true and saw that it wasn't true, then we have a conversation to have, right? So my general recommendation is take the seller at the word pre-LOI, ask the questions you have to know, and after LOI, that's when you get the opportunity to verify that, right?
Yeah, see if the trust is eroded or not. All right, I want to shift gears onto one of the other services that you provide to anybody that goes to your website at no cost, and that's MarketWatch. But before we go there, I want to put you on the spot. This is almost like a 30-second commercial break for our friend in common, Chuck Mullins. You've known Chuck, and the audience knows who Chuck is at this point, and I just love busting his balls. So, Chris, if you have to describe Chuck Mullins in 30 seconds or less, please complete the sentence. Chuck Mullins is...
He's just a sharp guy. Like he, of all the people that I've met, he is the one who can find an angle in almost any situation. And he is just extremely, extremely good at doing that. And having somebody like that around you is actually very, very valuable. Like I could see, for brokering as an example, he's going to tell you before that thing goes on the market of what buyers are going to complain about on your business and really prepare you properly for it and things like that. Cause he sees the angles, right? He's very, very good at that.
I agree with everything you said. Look, if Mark and I are having discussion about the business and what to do, and we want to put an email out there, we jokingly say, why don't we just send it to Chuck? Because he's the one that's going to respond with the most detail and the most advice. Chuck is also the person that I think we get the most feedback from. Like, just got an email the other day, a transaction closed, and just rave reviews about what a difference Chuck made in their lives. It's just, I don't know what he does. It's unduplicatable. Anyway, that's our little infomercial on Chucky the Third, Chuck Mullins, folks. Reach out to him. Tell him how much you love him. Okay, let's go on to MarketWatch, right? This is for the buyers in the audience. Anytime somebody sets up a call with myself, Mark, and any member of the team, and they want to talk about buying a business, and we walk them through the process of subscribing to our new listing updates and whatnot, usually what I say is, you can do this and you should do this. But what you really want to definitely do on top of that is subscribe to MarketWatch. Go to the site and I talk them through it and tell them what to do. Can you give an overview of what MarketWatch is? I remember when you launched it, thought it was a brilliant idea, but it's so much bigger and better than it was back then.
Yeah. So for context, Centurica, we don't do buyer brokering of any kind. When it comes to buyers who want to work with us,
I don't know anyone who does or that does it well, just for the record. Sorry to interrupt.
Right. Yeah. Or finding deals for people or whatever. So, but we always had people asking us, and so we needed a solution that would be helpful to those buyers who are still looking, because really people can't get the most value from us until they've identified a potential deal, right, that they're going to do, and preferably once they've got an LOI signed. So we needed to, kind of figure out some way to support those people. And so the original founder of MarketWatch, prior to me acquiring it, had started this thing called the MarketWatch. And what it is, it's like an aggregator of a lot of the brokered and marketplace listings that are out there, put into one place and kind of standardize a little bit in terms of what is being viewed. So you can see quiet light listings, you can see other brokerage listings and things like that, all kind of in one place. You can set up email alerts. If you're looking for just Amazon FBA, you can filter just those and get emails just for Amazon FBA, et cetera. So the simplest way I could think about it for those who aren't as savvy with the industry would be, it's like realtor.com when you're looking for, properties, right? You go there and you see all the properties. So we're kind of trying to do that for online business listings.
Yeah. Somebody referred to it as MLS for online listings.
Yes, exactly right. And not everybody knows what MLS is. So I just use realtor.com,
yeah,
but yes, that is the
or Zillow, multiple listing service.
Yeah.
And I think it's brilliant. Biz by Sell was, doing it, right? A lot of people, we used to list stuff on Biz by Sell back in 2011 and 12, but it's not specific to online businesses. And you can't narrow the search down as simply and easily as you can here. And I'm looking at it on my screen, folks. Chris, why don't you charge for this service? Yet. Maybe you're going to. Yes.
No,
I think you should. Why don't you? Come on.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about it. Let's just put it this way. We could either do a $20,000 engagement for one client on due diligence, or we could try to charge $5 to a bunch of buyers, way before they ever work with us. Which one, we did the calculus and it just didn't make sense. And I think it's good for the industry to have a resource like this available. And one thing I didn't mention, it's not like a classified site where we list people's businesses as of now. We've thought about that, but at the end of the day, we just wanted to create an easier way, because we still recommend people go sign up with the email lists of every brokerage and meet the brokers. Like, personal relationships can go a long way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of value in just sort of going to each individual place. But if you want to get just a quick feel, what's going on with FBA or businesses that are over $1 million, what are the asking prices currently? You can look on our site and just kind of get a really good feel. And then, you can get a kind of a roll up of all of these instead of having to go, contact 10 different brokers to get all the listings in your email and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I really answered your question directly, but just financially it didn't make sense. But, we spend a couple $1,000s a month just maintaining it. And to us, I feel like to some degree, it does keep us top of mind. So there is some benefits, a little bit of selfishness there, if you will. It keeps us top of mind for when somebody does get a deal.
Well, I think it's brilliant. I really do. I think you're serving a lot of buyers in a way that just makes their life a whole lot easier. How many different brokerage firms do you pull in data from?
Actually, you can look on the website by going to
I can go to brokers.
there's a section on there that says exclude brokers, and you can actually just get a list of all the brokers that we currently are aggregating. I will say that we aggregate ones that we felt had a decent signal to noise ratio. And what I mean by that is we don't often see them having obvious scams as a good proportion of their listings, or really unreasonable buyer experiences and things like that. So there are other brokerages out there and other marketplaces out there that we don't aggregate. Typically that's because either we don't have a relationship with them or we've chosen not to aggregate them for a specific reason. So you will see a few brokers that are not on here, but I'm guessing there's probably a dozen or two that we have aggregated right now.
There's probably more out there that you don't know of than those that you don't want to work with.
Right.
Have you ever had to remove anybody from your broker list?
I have. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you who. Who was it, Chris? No. You look like, has anyone ever told you look like Tom Brady?
I've got a little bit of Tom Brady. There's a couple doppelgangers I have out there that are, sort of celebrities. I don't even think they're married now, but my wife tells me that Leanne Rimes' ex-husband looks just like me. And then the guy from, the trainer from The Biggest Loser, I don't even know his name, but he's the other one that I get a lot. So I've heard Tom Brady.
I'm going Tom Brady. I'm actually I'm gonna go back to when I asked you about Chuck and the smile you had, the funny, awkward smile you had on your face. And I'm going to screenshot it, and then I'm going to put you by Brady. And maybe I'll put Brady as the picture of the guest on the podcast, but put your name there. Maybe nobody will notice. We'll see.
All right. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
All right. Chris, I want to wrap up with just saying that, I've been at this for a decade now, and grown up in the industry back in, 11 and 12. I was just looking at the numbers. The average transaction size was, for us at Quiet Light was in the $100,000, $200,000 range. And now it's in the, we have 34 listings under letter of intent right now, with an average transaction value of about $4 million. Our overall for the year will be lower than that, probably in the 2 to 2.5. But it's just crazy how this industry has grown up. And you've been one of those people, one of those firms that's been out there just defending and fighting for accuracy and the truth, being one of the good guys, the good humans. There's probably I'll give two handfuls of people that I would point to that are just good humans trying to do the right thing and working with the help first mentality. And that's you and Brian over at Centurica. And I think what you're doing with MarketWatch is spot on. So anybody that's out there looking to buy a business, you should definitely subscribe to MarketWatch. And when you buy one, hire Centurica, but plan on some delays, because things are crazy busy right now. Just like Quiet Light, we have, didn't tell you this, Chris. You asked how business was. I think we've had an average of 4.5 offers on every listing so far year to date. And that means that you guys are incredibly busy as well. So I'm sure there's a backlog there of being able to work with clients. Yes?
Yeah, to some degree. We kind of take it, I guess, week by week to some degree. And where our company is moving right now is we're working with more repeat buyers, because it allows us to better plan and service them really, really well. That's not to say that we want to be helpful to anybody buying a business, because, why we exist is so that people don't totally, as you mentioned early on, totally make a huge mistake and get a panda, not that we can predict it, but penguin update, like you mentioned. I hate seeing that in our industry. I want people who are especially first-time buyers to have a great experience. And even if it means I hop on the phone with them for 15 to 30 minutes, just to kind of give them my experience for the type of deal that they're looking at, sometimes that can be enough to get them set up to do their own due diligence, or to potentially work with us. So, I don't want to tell people that, we aren't taking on clients, but we are prioritizing our existing clients who are coming back to us regularly.
Excellent. Well, we'll put Centurica and the MarketWatch in the show links. I'm also going to go ahead and link folks a podcast that Chuck did on due diligence, and a whole list of due diligence tools that he uses in the event you want to go out and do this on your own. Chris, you've been fantastic. Again, you and Brian are a couple of the good guys in the industry. The other one is Chuck, of course. Is there anything you'd like to say about our friend Chuck one last time before we close out the podcast for the day?
Well, we didn't talk about it, but I also run an industry conference, and Chuck came to the conference in 2012, the first event we ever did. So he's actually, you mentioned OG. Chuck is OG in this industry. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he is one of those people you mentioned who are kind of always leading with value. Like he used to go speak about buying websites for years and never got anything out of it. And, it's sort of evolved into where he's at now with Quiet Light and his experience with other acquisitions and doing deals and things like that. So I just would actually encourage people, if you get an opportunity to sit down and have a meal with Chuck or hop on the phone with them, to do it. I don't want to make him more busy. That's why I'm almost hesitant to do it, because I know he's like slammed right now, and is he one of your top brokers right now?
Oh, hell yeah. He's slammed in a good, happy way though.
Yeah. So I think Chuck's great. So I leave the busting of balls to Jason, who's my MC for my conference. Those two are always busting each other's balls at the event. So I'll leave that to Jason. But I love Chuck.
I've been to your events, and that is actually what happens. One has a microphone and the other doesn't. Jason does and Chuck doesn't, but Chuck gets him in just as much.
That's right.
All right, Chris, thanks for coming back on. Appreciate it. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe.
Folks, that's a wrap for this episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Please do subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. It helps us reach a larger audience and helps us rank better. It's not necessarily downloads anymore. It's subscribers. So please subscribe. And if you have not picked up a copy of the Exitpreneurs Playbook, whether you're a buyer or a seller of online businesses, pick it up. It's going to help you reverse engineer a path to a great exit or a great purchase by getting your own ignorance discount if you're buying directly from a seller. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.